Ready to go, yeah?
Good. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate that. Hi, everybody. Welcome along to our Inspire20 session. My name is Neil Wilkinson, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about, first of all, my career path. Hopefully give you a few insights into perhaps how your career will span out, or give you a few ideas and some inspiration about how you might sort of target your development moving forward. So my journey is actually quite short. I've been in the industry for about 7 years, but there's really only four key steps in my journey so far that have led into the renewable industry. So I started my journey from in high school all those years ago. I wasn't a high performer, middle of the class, but there was a few key life lessons in high school that sort of kicked me down this pathway as an engineer, and then ultimately into renewables. And then from high school, I went on into university. I originally did a 4-year degree in mechanical engineering. My dad was a mechanical engineer before me. I had interests in cars and moving parts. It certainly seemed to me like an avenue I wanted to explore more, and went down that path at university. At the end of my 4 years, I hadn't planned on it, but I got offered to take up the master's degree to do the final year, which I gladly accepted and completed my master's. At that point, actually, it was a decision. Really, I had two choices. So I had the decision to make whether I would pursue my sort of real passion at the time, which was cars and motorsport and that side of mechanical engineering. And then on the other hand, quite a lot of people from down in Fife were moving up to Aberdeen for the oil and gas industry around 2012, 2013. It was still a booming industry. And I've applied actually just right across the board for both these two areas of my focus of where I want to go. And it so happened that oil and gas won out purely just because I had more interviews and more assessment centres. So ultimately I ended up at Aker Solutions. So that was 7 years ago now. So I started my Aker Solutions journey 2 years in the graduate scheme. I was then put into a global process role. So I was involved right across Aker Solutions as a global company, working on a range of topics. We're sort of charged with making sure that everything was done the same way across the whole business. So you can imagine going to McDonald's, in China, it's the exact same as it is over here. The same methodology applied to Aker Solutions. We were making sure that we built the components the same across the world, and everything was done the same way. And then after a couple of years in that role, I made the change back to mechanical engineering. I progressed in that position, ultimately getting a senior position. And a point I'll make quite clear throughout the whole presentation is to challenge yourself, is to push yourself personally in your development goals. Because what I was doing a lot at Aker Solutions was I was putting my hand up. I was saying I want to be involved in this, I want to be involved in that, and that ultimately led to me getting offered a couple of sort of like key roles in company development positions. And then that led to me being involved in the strategy for the UK on low carbon. And I know my background is mechanical, it's purely subsea and oil and gas, but then here's me getting asked to be involved in renewable things. And then after that was successful, I then started a role in business development. So a complete shift to the left, and I stopped my career in mechanical engineering and moved into business development, creating opportunities for Aker Solutions in the renewable space and low carbon. And then ultimately, very excitingly, I got offered a secondment position at the OGTC. So that further enhances what I was doing in the low carbon space. We're actually running projects, looking at technologies that are applicable in the renewable space that include decarbonisation, includes carbon capture, includes wind, a whole load of things. And although my career is broadly speaking over 4 steps, there's a lot of things that you can do as a person, as an individual, that are supplementary to your career that actually really help build those key skills up that you need to develop. So in between university and high school, I worked part-time as a waiter. Now, other people were doing part-time jobs as mechanics, other people were doing, other jobs, but I was a waiter, and I thought that was perhaps a bad thing to have on my CV at the time, but it's not, because I had to work to strict quality measures. I was client facing, You know, it built up my confidence in speaking. You know, it built up my presentation, like in terms of keeping myself in a presentable, you know, manner and the way I speak to people. And then on top of that, as you develop through your career, you find yourself attending seminars is a good example. You know, going to offshore Europe, I would force myself to sort of talk to people, build those key skills up. And that's now found me in a position now later on in my career where I'm starting to present examples such as this, talking to you guys today. You know, I'm like, again, I'm challenging myself to you know, to do something different, to speak to you all. And then on the other side of that coin is things that I do sort of like socially. And I've put this key point up here of the careers advisor, because when I was in high school, I went to the careers advisor and they told me I should be a mechanic. And that was probably true at the time, but it gave me this sort of kick up the backside to say, to challenge this person, be like, no, I think I can do more than that. So, and then at the same time, actually, a teacher told me that I could do advanced higher maths, but do it for a couple of months and see how I felt. And if it was too hard for me and I struggled with it, then I can drop out. And I ended up doing better in advanced higher than higher. I don't know if that was her plan the whole way along, but there's all these little things that build your career up that you don't think about, and only when you take time to reflect, they actually help. It's been involved in social events and sports teams. Again, these things are very applicable to your career development. You know, you're socializing, you're managing events, you're socially involved with people. These are all key skills for you moving forward. So with that being said, I thought we'd hop on over to Menti. So for those of you, sorry, there we go. For those of you not familiar with Menti, head on over to menti.com and enter the code shown on the screen. And that will ask you, first of all, the question, do you have a plan for the next 5 years? And then secondly, after that, we'll move on and it will be, do you think that I had a plan at your age? So I'll just hop on over to Menti right now and we'll see those results coming in. Excellent. So we've got some people contributing already. We're already, oh, it's about, you know, not doing too bad, 50-50 split. This is quite exciting to see, because obviously there's, for the way I see it, I've read quite a lot of self-help books, and I've heard a lot of both sides of the coin about whether you should have a plan, whether you shouldn't, and both have their arguments, but it'd be quite interesting to see what you all think, and then what you think I did as well. I'll give that a couple more seconds and we'll move on to the next one. No, it's good to hear. It's good to hear both it's a 50-50 split. That's what I was hoping for, because whilst it's good to have a plan, it's also good that we're independent, that we know what, you know, we don't necessarily need to have a plan, is what I'm trying to say in this point as well. It's good to have a plan, but at the same time, having a plan and being flexible is also, not having a plan, sorry, is also about being flexible, and things will change naturally over time. So I'll move on to the next one as well. So do you think that at my age, given my experience and what I've done in my career, do you think that I had a plan? This is interesting. Oh, it's great to see these answers coming through. Thanks for everyone that's getting involved on Menti. This, those of you who have voted no, that is true. I didn't have a plan. I had a goal. I certainly had a goal, and like I have aspirations, of course, to have get to a certain point in my career. But I've never had a plan. I've been completely flexible, and what has been consistent, rather than having a plan, is a personal belief and a personal drive and a personal sort of opinion of myself that I like to, you know, push myself in my development. That ultimately leads to the plan changing. And if like the example I gave earlier on about me pushing myself at Accurate Solutions, putting my hand up to make it known that I had an opinion, that ultimately led to me getting involved in company-wide initiatives for improvement, and then eventually it got me into this renewable space. That didn't come about with me having a plan, me moving into renewables. It purely came from I want to challenge myself. I I'm happy with who I am, kind of, but I want to be, I want to be more, and so I would then push myself to be more. It was never a plan to get to a certain title or have a certain wage or any of that. So it was interesting to see what you guys think you thought of that. Hop on back to PowerPoint. Okay, so net zero. So obviously part of the reason you're here today is to talk about me getting into that renewable space and how you can do the same. And what I'm trying to get across here is a critical point, and something that proper excites me, is that right now this is a picture of how the oil and gas industry is changing right now. On the slides here you can see that we're focused on net zero offshore operations. We're looking at renewable integration, we're looking at hydrogen, and we're looking at carbon capture and storage. Now, when I was at school and when I was at university, and then for the first 5 years of me working in the oil and gas industry, this didn't really exist. Okay, so me having a plan didn't really matter. And what I'm trying to say here is that we've never been in this situation before as young people in the next generation. The eyes are on us to make the change to get the whole world to net zero by 2050. And at the same time, this industry is brand new. So 40 years ago, when the oil and gas industry started, or 40, 50 years ago, people, obviously, that was the marketplace to be in. This is, in my opinion, it now. So, it's fantastic that you guys are on call today to learn about, some of the steps that I've taken. But nobody knows what this is going to really look like in 2050. We have our targets for net zero, of course, but the amount of opportunities this is just a picture of oil and gas. These industries all exist separately as well. So there's the hydrogen, the development of hydrogen is happening regardless of oil and gas. The same is happening in offshore renewable integration, and carbon capture and storage is, again, another part of the puzzle that's developing with or without oil and gas. And the opportunities here for us as young people are vast. Like they're huge. So design, engineering, HR, legal, the opportunities are huge. And as I've tried to show you earlier on, me as an engineer, me choosing mechanical engineering for a degree, really, it matters, but it doesn't dictate where I end up. So, 5 or 6 years in oil and gas, and now suddenly I'm in renewables because of this new emerging market. So really what I'm trying to say is be flexible, is challenge yourself to ask those questions, to say that you want to be involved in initiatives moving forward. Hey, the company is looking for someone to get involved in an improvement initiative. Yeah, I want to be part of that. Why do you want to be part of that? Well, because I have aspirations to work in renewables. It's a key point that I've come across in my development is that every company does need those people to come in and do the 9 to 5 job and go home. And every company needs that. But if you're a little bit like me and you want something a little bit more, that you have to sort of push yourself and present yourself to be more than just that person that does the 9 till 5. So you doing simple things, just like saying, I want to be involved in that. I would like to do that. I would love to help the company with its renewable, the transition. Then ask these questions. They certainly help with the development. And this space is huge. I'm already working on projects that are looking directly at reducing offshore operation emissions. I'm looking at projects about renewable integration. We're talking about hooking up wind turbines to offshore oil and gas assets to help reduce the power generation emissions. And then you've got hydrogen and carbon capture on the end there. These are, we're talking about completely replacing fossil fuels in the future with the likes of hydrogen. And that comes with either blue hydrogen, which is the burning of natural gas, but with carbon capture. So we're capturing the CO2. And then green hydrogen is something completely different, which is using wind power to generate hydrogen. It's very clean, and that's why they call it obviously green hydrogen, because it doesn't include any fossil fuels. So that's just a brief overview of the industry that we're facing. But I don't know if you can tell by my excitement that the industry is crying out for the next generation to help get us to net zero. And this is just an opportunity for us to be involved and adapt and change, and we're not bound by our degree, we're not bound by the studies, the classes that we took in high school. You can reinvent yourself, you can chop and change if you are willing to do that from a personal point of view. So I think I've got one more slide on Menti, one more question, and it's a bit of it's a word bank. So we want you to go into Menti again, and in this slide we were asking, where do you see your career going in the future? Is it oil and gas? Is it something completely different? Is it renewables? So I'll just hop on over to Menti and we'll see what everyone is saying. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that, and if you're in Menti, you can. These are good. Both of those questions, so that answers definitely sit well with me. Guys, these are great answers. Now, I'm glad to see this positivity here, because obviously in the past there's a little bit of concern about how things are going, but the future obviously is so bright when it comes to renewables. The renewable energy transition, these are things that are huge. They're going to create a lot of jobs. It's going to create a lot of money for the industry, and the UK is in prime position to be number one in the world for a lot of these sectors. So they're looking to us, obviously, as young people to help get us there. These are great. Thanks, guys. I appreciate this. This is good feedback. It's good to see words like hopeful in there, because obviously things are challenging now, but and people have heard things about the oil and gas industry with it declining, but this transition is going to kick off a new phase of the oil and gas industry that's something that's never been seen before. I mean, oil and gas, when it started, was huge, and then in the late 80s there was obviously a health and safety reform, and then digitalization has been pretty big recently. But renewables, energy transition, and net zero is something we all have to do, and it just creates so many opportunities for us moving forward. Guys, thank you for that. And if you're still on Menti, I'll let you populate that, and I'll be able to look at these responses later on. But I need to head back over to the PowerPoint presentation now and wrap up there. So hopefully you found that quite insightful, and hopefully I gave you a few nuggets of information and tips from my career that help you move forward in this space. And feel free to ask questions in the group chat.
Thank you so much, Neil. That was I really enjoyed that. Even working in the OGTC, where I get more exposed than most to some of this stuff, it's really great to hear your story. I didn't know a lot about your background there, so that was great. And also some of your words of wisdom there were fantastic. So I've written a lot of them down. Thank you. So we have got some questions. So I'll start with Charlene. Anybody else that's got questions, please post them into chat or put your hand up and I'll come back to you. But I've got a few questions here just to get us kicked off. So Charlene, you've got a question here about secondment. So as we said earlier, Neil is on a secondment to his employer's Aker Solutions, and he's been working at the OGTC on a secondment in our net zero team. So the question is, were you worried about taking on a secondment? And the second part of the question, do you think you'd have developed as much if you hadn't joined the OGTC? So maybe start with the first one. How did you feel about joining? Were you worried?
Yeah, like any other position, like any other job. Sorry, I'm getting a bit of feedback there, Susan. There we go. Yeah, like any other position, when you start a new job, I was worried. Not worried, but it was obviously exciting, and it's something new, and anything that's new can often be quite daunting. But I was made to feel welcome pretty quickly. Within the first half an hour, I had a chat with the whole team, and I felt, immediately useful in the team. I was set on a project that I'm still working on right now, and it's going to be a really influential report for the industry. So it's that feeling of welcomeness that helped. But as to the second question from Charlene, I definitely think that has helped, because I was moved it from, as I said earlier, from mechanical engineering into business development, a completely new role for me. That requires networking. It requires confidence and selling and speaking to clients, something that the OGTC do daily. I talk to clients all the time. I talk to the government. I talk to bodies like the OG UK and ORE Catapult, for instance. So yeah, from that perspective, absolutely, and from a technical perspective, even more. It's raised the profile on a lot of technologies that I didn't even know existed, and it's certainly broadened my understanding and of where I want to be in my career and how it will look moving forward. Not necessarily a plan, but it has given me ideas from which to help pursue my development as well. So it's been good.
Great answer, Neil. Thanks. And that's a great question, Charlene. Next question is from Lois. Another really good question. What advice would you give to yourself if you were starting out in your career now?
I think I would go back and tell myself to be more confident sooner. So it took me time. Like, it takes everybody time. Like, it took me until about my 4th year at Aker Solutions, and we were in a town hall, and I think the CEO was here. So it was one of those visits. The CEO was here, and he was like, does anybody have any questions? And there was like 400 people in the room, and nobody was putting their hand up. And I was just like, well, if you're ever going to get the CEO to notice you need to ask a question. I was like, well, so I forced myself to ask this question, and it did ultimately lead to me getting asked to be involved in more of these company-wide initiatives. But I would have gone back in time and told myself to do that sooner. Do you know what I mean? Because I waited so long, probably because of a bit of self-doubt that I wouldn't be listened to. But that's what I basically would have just told myself to get, people are willing to hear you if you're willing to talk to them. So it's just
That's another great answer, isn't it? I think at the start of our careers, everybody lacks confidence, and you think everybody else knows so much more, and it's not the case, especially nowadays. We need people to be putting their hands up. Great answer, great question, great answer. Thanks, Lois. So here's a question from Helen. Helen says that she's very interested in energy transition and specifically hydrogen, but she's struggling to find entry-level roles. What would you recommend as a path to start to get involved with the energy transition later on? She's concerned about getting stuck in oil and gas. Another great question, Helen. Thanks.
Yeah.
Neil, what's your views?
Fantastic question. Yeah, like, to be fair, the energy transition is just starting. So the development of hydrogen, the development of pathways for hydrogen and carbon capture and renewables are still very much in their infancy. But I share the same fear as you, because a year ago we were looking at oil and gas industry on the decline. People were worried for their jobs, and now there's this new opportunity. How do we get in there early doors? My advice would be to be as I have been, and that's proactive. Keep chasing. You will experience knockbacks. Everyone does. But it's just about how you overcome them and keep pushing forward. And the hydrogen, these markets are going to explode over time in the next couple of years. So even if you do start in the oil and gas industry, as I did, you will be given opportunities to progress into other industries as you move forward. Because I was naive to the fact that when I joined oil and gas, that would be me stuck. And again, I would never get to transition. But again, by being proactive, asking questions, being involved, being polite, working hard, and delivering on my targets, that ultimately led to me being involved in more of these. So just keep an eye on weathered eye on the horizon. Keep a look out for opportunities. OGTC does a lot of work, and companies like OGTC, OG UK, everyone from industry bodies to companies, just keep an eye out. And if you have to go down the route of oil and gas and then transition, it is possible. You just need to, and doing a little bit of background research doesn't help. It doesn't not help either. So it's absolutely helps. So I've been doing that on the side as well. So you sort of build up your knowledge base. I hope that helped. It's a difficult question. It's a good question as well. So
great question. Thanks, Helen. Ryan, I'm going to keep your one for the end, because that's a really good question for Neil. We'll keep that one. Naomi, kind of your question links to Helen's one about how do I get work experience in the oil and gas renewables industry, especially as an undergraduate. So anything you'd want to build on your last question, Neil, for undergraduates in particular?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. Yeah, it's really about keeping your eye out. It's difficult, like, because it is an emerging space. There may be specific opportunities out there related to these industries independently. So there's no harm in being in oil and gas and transitioning to renewables. Likewise, you can do renewables and transition. The space is rapidly developing over time. As for me, maybe have a couple of opportunities to hand, because like I said earlier, I had a focus on the motorsport car industry, and then I also had oil and gas. I didn't put all my eggs in one basket, and these roles are very much, interchangeable. Like I said earlier, mechanical engineer degree, and I was doing global process roles. I'm doing business development roles. You need to be, as long as you're willing and you're happy to. I heard, I don't know, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I heard recently in another interview, not an interview, but another presentation like this, someone applying for jobs, even though their CV didn't quite match the ask from the company itself. So it's taking little risks like that, and pushing yourself to even go for a job that perhaps you don't think you can be applicable to. It's really about the person sometimes, and how you are as an individual. I'm sorry if I'm going round in circles.
No, that was a great answer, Neil. And we've got about 4 minutes, so I'm just going to take our last 3 questions. The next one I can maybe take, if that's okay. Neil, you can add anything to it. So I'll give you a minute to catch your breath, which is from, and again, I'm going to get this wrong, apologies, Iomicon. So this one is a question around about going into a graduate going into the worst job market since 2008, 2010, looking for a career or a role in engineering and energy. Do you have any advice for approaching the job application and interview process, and any tips on how to bolster ourselves in the downtime? So we are doing a masterclass. The last 2 masterclasses of Inspire20 are on those very things: how to apply and tips for interviews. So rather than going into a lot of detail here, please come and join us then, and we'll be absolutely focusing in on those ones. In terms of how to bolster yourself in the downtime, a lot of it is keeping your morale up. And I've been given a lot of people, I deal with recruitment to the OGTC, and we get lots and lots of applications in for jobs. And some of the younger people that, when I've been helping them look at their CVs, one of the things is that they just don't have any work experience. Maybe something you could do just now if you can't get a job is do some volunteering, do something to build up your CV, and it'll also hopefully make you feel good about yourselves, and do lots of research on energy transition, net zero. There's loads of stuff out there, so you can show that you know more than other people. We've got lots of links to that we'll tell you about that at the end. Last 2 questions, Neil. Simona's got a great question. This is a fun one. What's your favorite part of working at the OGTC?
Oh, the team. It's quite easy. No, it's being involved in projects that are clearly defining the industry moving forward. So, traditionally work for a main, like a company such as Aspirations, is every projects are based on the company winning work and making money and developing as a company and moving themselves to net zero. But the OGTC, we're enabling technology developers to get their technologies to market, and on one hand, and more recently, we've been involved in some of the bigger projects that are clearly enabling, the development of the energy transition, whether that's looking at energy hubs, whether that's looking at offshore emission reduction. I get to put my name against a report that's coming out in the next couple of months. It's around technologies and solutions that are out there to reduce emissions offshore, and that will be disseminated to the whole industry, and my name's on that. And that's such a nice feeling. Like, it's a payoff for all the hard work that I've put in. So it's I think that side of it, yeah.
Great answer. And last one, I think you've probably got about 30 seconds, so a quick answer in this one. This was from Ryan. Where do you see your career in 5 years, Neil?
Yeah, I don't have a plan, but I don't have a plan, but I have an aspiration. The aspiration is to one day manage people, because having pushed myself to be more vocal, and I actually found myself discovering that I would like to manage people in the long term. So that's, in 5 years, I'd love to be to managing people. If it doesn't happen, then I'll push myself in a different direction, or it'll probably change in about a year anyway.
That's another great answer. And just all, you've got so much wisdom. I'm sure you'd be great at developing people and helping them with their career. So thank you, Neil. Thank you for such a great presentation and such open answers. I think it's really a privilege when people share their personal stories. So thank you. Thank you also for all the people that have come along and listened in on today's session. I hope you found it useful. I think we've got one more slide, maybe, Neil?
Do we?
Maybe. Yay, fantastic. If anybody would like to come along to our next session, we're going to be talking about data analytics, data science. We've got an amazing data analytics team at the OGTC. So Jenna and Jess are going to tell you about their careers and how you, if you're interested in data science, how you can get a career in that area, and why we need it, why it's so important as part of the energy transition. Click on the QR code and that'll take you to our site where you can get booked onto that. We've also got some great resources that you might want to go and have a look at on our website. There's so much out there. We've tried just to stick to 2 or 3 things that are really interesting and useful. If you've got more questions from today that you feel you didn't ask, or something occurs later, we'd love to hear from you. Also, if you've got any feedbacks on other sessions that we could be doing to help you, we want to help you, we want to help your careers. We need great people in our industries, so we need you. Here's our email address, STEM@the OGTC. That stands for, we're hopefully going to get this right, Science, Technology, Engineering and Maths. So last message, thanks Neil, brilliant session, and thank you for everybody coming along, and hopefully we'll see you all again soon. Thanks, bye.
So much. Cheers.